was a really well-produced documentary. It covers an important topic that I personally didn't know a lot about, so I'm sure I'm not the only one. It was really eye-opening. I appreciated hearing about the near miss and the refineries, but also the community effects. Whenever we talk about any kind of environmental or political issue, I think it's so important to know about the potential damage it's going to have on human life or quality of life. I found it really interesting to hear that it's mostly low-income communities that are in this kind of danger zone. There's a good mix of information, interviews, and footage of people fighting for this cause here. I thought this was really well done.
I really appreciate you bringing light to this subject. I am a recent transplant to LA and I did not know anything about this. The movie starts and that woman, she says, like I used to drive by it on my way to work, but I didn't think much of it. And I think when something happens in a big city like LA, we drive past that thing all the time and then something happens and we don't notice it, or like we're too busy in our own lives to notice it or to take action. And I think by making this, you bring it to the attention of, so many people in LA who may not know. And also, it's not just about that. It's also that, you center the people who are affected, who the communities surrounding are mostly, Latinx communities. And so we have these minority communities that we don't know what is going on. And this helps us bring light to that.
Near Miss was a great documentary short. It was about the refinery problems in California. And one of the companies released MHF, which is a dangerous chemical that endangered a lot of the beaches and a lot of people in the areas when there was a refinery explosion or something happened. But overall, the whole documentary is well done. It really gave you a holistic approach and like what the whole situation was about. The interviews, the personal touch, and the shot framing, and the cuts, and the primary footage of senators talking and the Congress and other places. I just felt when it got into political stuff, the momentum slowed down a little bit. But once that part of the documentary was dealt with, a lot of it was done better. It was more cohesive and more engaging. But overall, Near Miss was a great short.
Near Miss was a fantastic documentary, and I think that they did a really great job of explaining everything that happened around this explosion at this power plant. And I mean, I think that we can all agree that power plants and factories that are using highly toxic chemicals should not be in residential areas. And we have just seen that time and time again because the people that are impacted are pretty much always low-income, racialized, marginalized people who have to deal with immediate but also long-term adverse health effects. And it affects themselves, it affects their families, it affects their quality of life, and it should never be allowed. The fact that these communities have to advocate for themselves because the city and the state and the country is not doing anything to prevent this is so unfortunate. And we did get to hear from them directly. And I thought that they just did a wonderful job of advocating and fighting for their families and fighting for their lives. When they said that this had the potential to have a mass casualty, 50,000 people, I believe was the number, that could have been impacted by this. And yet the companies are like, but it didn't happen. It could have, but it didn't. We're being as safe as possible. And just prioritizing profits over people. It's gross. And yeah, so I'm really proud of them for fighting for this, even though they did lose that specific case in the documentary. They're still fighting and they're still advocating, and they had said, it's better to have fight and lost than to have never fought at all. And I absolutely agree with that. So I think this is really good for people to know about. I'm personally not in the States, so I hadn't heard about it, but I'm willing to bet a lot of people who are in California also didn't know about this. So this was very, very well done, and I hope that it gets in front of a lot more audiences.
Wow, this was so well done. That's right out the gate. This was incredibly well done. It was incredibly educational. I'm so glad that I saw this because now I know so much more than what I used to know before. When this film first started, it was scary to see how close that region came of having like 50,000 people wiped out. It was the images that they showed us, they were horrifying. It was very, very frightening, but it was also very educational, which was kind of a slap in the face for us. Like, we need to be paying attention about these oil refineries. And I think they did a great job in getting that across. The filmmakers, the editors, the score was really good. It fit the piece absolutely beautifully. So they did a great job with this. They also explained really well where I didn't have questions. I was following along. I understood everything, all of the valid points that they were making. So fantastic job on this film.
I had no idea what MHF was. And of course, poisonous substances shouldn't be used, especially in the residential areas. The people have a right to be concerned. This is very interesting on a topic most people know nothing about. And the message should be shared to those interested in learning about MHF. Like I said, this was something I knew nothing about. This is something we should get out there. It's something that needs to be talked about far and wide. It's a very informative film, and it should definitely be shared.
Near Miss was a really interesting short documentary. I've never really put a lot of thought into refineries and the communities that they affect, and how these communities can, be wiped out like instantaneously because of it, and how these like larger oil companies and refineries can like target low income communities because they aren't going to have as much of a voice like fighting against them. And it's really terrible. And I'm glad I learned about it through this piece. You do a great job of laying this information out in a way that's clear and easy to understand. And I definitely want to do something about it after watching it. And I think that's always the goal of a documentary, is to embolden the audience after viewing, and you do a great job of that. Just a really interesting topic, kind of depressing when you think about it, but the information's presented in a way that really makes you care, and it's put together very well, very clearly, very concisely, and is just a very well done piece.